What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
From motorcycle to gazelle, what makes the Northern Forest different from the rest of the championship is the season. It is the only winter snow and ice race. This year, looking at the rain-wet streets without a grain of snow, I thought the race would be a mud race. This is strange, because 2 years ago Baja was held in a fierce blizzard, a year ago in freezing temperatures of 30 degrees. There was almost no hope for winter weather befitting Baja when just a few days before the start, in early February, the thermometer still dropped below zero and snow fell. The frost never hit, but at least it looked like winter. What does it matter? For the teams, it matters a lot. As my friends from the GAZ Reed Sport team, with whom I went to Leningrad region for the competition, say, in such weather you have to readjust your cars. The thing is that in winter the cold air is denser than in summer heat and more saturated with oxygen. And this time the engines had to be tuned for a less rich mixture. And besides, we had to slightly change the suspension settings of one of the cars. There is no loose snow, so we can't count on its amortization. By the way, why only one and not both? GAZ Reed Sport exhibits 2 Gazelles NN, so why we had to work with suspension of only one car? The answer is simple: it can be done quickly only on one car, the one with independent suspension at the front. In the photos it is a white Gazelle, and Alexei Ignatov and Yevgeny Pavlov, the usual crew of this car, are riding in it. The second green Gazelle will be driven by Alexander Semyonov and Dmitry Okartnikov. That is, the same crew that usually drives this car. By and large, these cars have not received any major changes for the new season. They showed themselves well last season. The white car won the championship last year, so there is no need to change anything significantly. Except that this white Gazelle with independent front suspension has a new gearbox from a serial all-wheel drive Sable NN, and it has significantly changed the car. The ground clearance has increased, which allows even with large suspension travels to bang on pits without fear of hitting the surface of the road. And the green car of Semyonov and Okartnikov remained unchanged. It is beautiful as it is. A total of 25 crews in 4 classes were allowed to start: T1, T2, T3 and R. Gazelles also compete in the last one, but as always, they need not only to win in their class, but also to score points in the absolute. That is among all participants. And it is difficult to do this. Even in a classification there are strong rivals, for example, prototypes of Bogdan Vavrenyuk and Mikhail Rastorgev, and there is nothing to say about the absolute. To overtake more than 10 skittish Kibitoks, buggies and Boris Gaddison, a multiple winner of the Northern Forest on a powerful prototype of the T1 classification group, it's not a priora from the traffic lights. It stinks of impudence and insolence. Really, in a good sense of these words. And here with whom you will not have to fight, so it is with motorcyclists and quadricyclists. There are 12 of them at the start, but they perform exclusively within the framework of their discipline, the All-Russian competition in motorcycle rally. They say that it is easier to race motorcycles in winter than in summer, in +30. The hell they know, but from the outside looking at motorcyclists it is painful both in summer and winter. To me they are completely incomprehensible people, but they deserve respect unequivocally. Baja took place over 3 days, and we'll take a look at how events unfolded during each of them. Day 1, Start and Prologue. The start is the place in rally raids where everyone gets to further, as it turns out. And Prologue is a short race, the results of which determine the starting positions on the second day of the race. The prologue, in our case it was 13 kilometers, is also usually passed by everyone, but not always quickly. Firstly, it is necessary to save the car for 3 days of the race, for which this year it was necessary to pass about 830 kilometers. Of which 530 kilometers in the mode tapper to the floor, and secondly, buggies even in the prologue can start to fall apart variators. This actually happened to Nikita Mazepin's Can-Am Maverick X3 XRS Turbo. He had to drive very slowly because of the variator malfunction. The crews of Vyacheslav and Elvira Poputskik, Yamaha YXZ 1000R, and Alexei Cherkasov and Artem Shevelev, Can-Am Maverick XRC Turbo. were also let down by the equipment. It should be noted that the track for buggies was really difficult, the snow had just fallen, there was a lot of slipping, and it was hard for the kibitzers. The best in the prologue was the crew of Dmitry Voronov and Kirill Enikiv, Can-Am Maverick XDS Turbo R of Team Maria Operina. The second place was taken by Pavel Andreev and Gleb Mokiev from 404 Racing Team, Can-Am Maverick XRC Turbo R, and the third by Boris Gaddison and Dmitry Kozhukov, G-Force Buzz Prototype of G-Force Motorsport Team. And what about our gazelles? Both crews drove calmly, as it seemed to me, even too much. Alexei Ignatov and Yevgeny Pavlov took 11th place in the absolute and third in their category, Alexander Semyonov and Dmitry Okartnikov 12th place in the absolute and fourth in their category. The crews rode in pairs, one after another, in the same sequence and started on the second day of the race. The start ceremony takes place after the prologue, and don't even ask why it is so and where is the logic in it. So on the same day all the crews drove on the podium at the Igora Drive, which has long been the center of the Northern Forest, and went to prepare for the second day of the race. Or the first serious day, 3 special stages, 2 72 kilometers and 1 111 kilometers, are not 13 kilometers of prologue. It's a different story. Day 2, the weather makes adjustments. Frankly speaking, journalists and photographers were happy to see the unusually warm weather in the Northern Forest. Even if there is not too much snow and the forest is not very northern, but it is still better than gnashing your teeth in the frost and being covered with a layer of frost and snow, standing somewhere at a photo point waiting for the next passing kibitka. But pilots are not too comfortable with warm weather and especially with a small amount of snow. The matter is not only that motors have to work in more difficult conditions, but also that they have no snow barriers along the track, which usually at least somehow protect them from Christmas trees and pine trees on the roadsides. You go off the road, you hit a tree. This is not a good prospect, so already in the prologue some people made an allowance for it and didn't trot like crazy, though usually they trot. But on the second day a lot of things changed. Firstly, it suddenly got colder, and minus 15 to 18 degrees after the thaw is a real winter with ice under the wheels. Secondly, it was a full race day, so it was impossible to be very careful. And so it went. Vyacheslav Poputsky's Yamaha YXZ-1000 crew was supposed to be the first to start, but it didn't work out, the engine failed and they couldn't start. That's why Dmitry Cherkasov's crew on Can-Am Maverick XRC Turbo R went first, but the leader on the first lap was Dmitry Voronov's crew on Can-Am Maverick XDS Turbo R. Next came the crew of Anastasia Nefontova on Can-Am Maverick Max XRS Turbo R, then Boris Gaddison on his G-Force bars. And this first special stage turned out to be the most difficult. Besides slippery ice, there were also streams, which had to be crossed by wading, breaking the ice that had not yet risen. As a result, it was impossible to go too fast. Many hoped that it would get warmer in the afternoon and the track would be more rolled out after the first lap. The grip was supposed to be better, the speed higher. Partly it happened, the track was rolled out. But either nerves began to fail, or someone believed in himself too much. As a result, there were failures, one after another. Manso Yenikiv's VAZ 21214 never refused to go to the second special stage even on the Liaison I.E., the section of the route that runs on public roads. The crews of Mikhail Rastorgev on Nissan Pathfinder and Ivan Parastoy on UAZ Cargo got off on the very section. The crew of Alexander Semyonov and Dmitry Okartnikov on a green Gazelle NN at one of the corners went off the track, and it was brought back by Andriy Dienerberg on his Toyota LC200. Thanks to Andriy, but we were offended. But on the next special stage Andriy Rudskoy and Bogdan Vavrenyuk also went off. Dmitry Voronov had to change the timing belt, and it is also a loss of time. However, he was able to get back on the fourth special stage and showed the best time, leaving behind both Anastasia Nefontova and Boris Gaddison. It so happened that a lot of failures among the crews in the A classification almost early secured the victory for Alexei Ignatov. He simply had no rivals left. He calmly and confidently came to the finish of the third special stage first in his classification and 11th in absolute. His teammate Alexander Semyonov after flying off the track a little behind in the general classification, but in the raid sport remained second, behind only Ignatov. But don't think that the guys were just riding like children on sledges. No, they had to sweat a lot. The tracks are slippery and narrow, especially for gazelles, so they had to pedal and turn the wheel actively. And Ignatov partly was easier. Independent suspension of his car is more suitable for active steering than Semyonov's uncut axle. But they both coped with the task. However, navigators complained they were bored because of not too complicated navigation. Well, let them rest for the time being. The season is just beginning. They will work hard in the sands. According to the results of 2 stages, Boris Gaddison, who races with himself in his T1 class, he is the only participant in this class, became the first in the absolute, Anastasia Nefontova the second, Dmitry Voronov the third. But there is one more day in which everything can still change. Day 3, everything is over, everything is just beginning. The third day differed from the first 2 in that the tracks of all special stages were already well rolled out. There was an opportunity to go faster, which inevitably led to an increase in the heat of the fight for places on the podium. That is, many were blasting with the accelerator on the floor. And if it helped some of them to get to the leaders, it prevented others to get to the finish without any adventures. Although some of them were not prevented from adventures. For example, Boris Gaddison, whose car's brakes failed. It's hard to believe, but even after flying off the track several times, Boris still showed the best time in absolute and won Northern Forest for the 5th time in a row. Of course, he won in the T1 classification too. And Dmitry Voronov, Team Maria Operina, drove his buggy off the track and treacherously hit a tree and then stopped to replace the belt, but still managed to take the bronze medal. Anastasia Nefontova drove in an untypical neat manner, but maybe just for this reason she was able to become the second in absolute. And the first in her class T3. In T2 the first was Andriy Dienerberg on Toyota LC200. And what about the R? And in raid sport there were no surprises. There was no aim to try to move Gaddison on his prototype from the first place in the absolute. It was simply impossible, and it was useless to fight with buggies from T3 class. These kibitkas have enough space in the forest, and gazelles are cramped on narrow paths. That's why crews from GAZ Reed Sport calmly passed the route of the final day in a comfortable mode and took the first and second places, Ignatov, Pavlov and Semyonov, Okartnikov respectively, in their group. Here they fulfilled the program to the maximum. And bronze in the team classification is also a very worthy result. The first place in the team classification was taken by Sandamp, Amp, Racing, the second by GeForce Motorsport. The fact that Baja was not boring is proved by the fact that out of 25 starting car crews only 19 made it to the finish, out of 13 athletes in Motor Rally 10. Daniil Vlasov became the first in quad bikes, Andriy Kukuts in open class and Rasul Shimyanov in 450 class. The first race is over and the season is just beginning. Now we will wait for April when the Cup of Russia will start in Alista. Then we will wait for the Gold of Kagan 2025 and many other races. The start of the season has been interesting. Let's see what will happen next. In conclusion, the Baja Russia Northern Forest 2025 event showcased a fascinating contrast between the unexpected and the regular. While the anticipated challenges and thrilling moments delivered excitement, it was the unforeseen twists that truly captivated participants and spectators alike. The event not only highlighted the resilience and adaptability of the competitors but also emphasized the beauty and unpredictability of nature. As we reflect on this year's experience, it becomes clear that the blend of the expected and the unexpected is what makes such events memorable and inspiring. We look forward to seeing how future editions will continue to surprise and engage us. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Baja Russia Northern Forest 2025.